One ASU researcher offering a different solution that stems from something that you would find in a supermarket. So David is live in the newsroom to explain what this is all about. David.
Scott Tess, good morning to you. When you think of mushrooms grown in nature, you typically think of somewhere cold and wet, the opposite of Arizona's summers, of course. But an ASU researcher found a specific type of fungus that survives here, and it could limit flash flooding. Emmanuel Salaflu is an assistant professor at ASU's School of Sustainable Engineering and Built Environment. Salaflu is using mycelium, which is the root of a mushroom, to show how it can bind together burnt soil. Right now, you're looking at different severities of charred dirt from the Saddlebrook fire in southern Arizona. The white stuff is the mycelium that grew on the soil in just a matter of days. Salaflu says this shows the mushroom root can bind together all of the soil, the particles there, the vegetation that was eroded from wildfires, limiting flash flooding. The ASU researcher tells us just how much of a burn scar this mushroom can cover and how it can make a difference after a wildfire.
A fungal mycelium is the largest organism in the world and occupies an area over 2,000 acres within the Blue Mountains in Oregon. That also speaks to the fact that we can scale this technology to very large areas for treatment of problems like erosion after wildfire.
Right now, Salaflu and his team is looking for more funding to experiment on mycelium on a much larger scale outside of his Tempe laboratory. Scott Tess, I'll send it back to you.